Greetings, everyone. This is Tom Bankston. I'm with BankBeat Quick Takes video blog. We're very happy today to have with us Shawn Rost, who is the South Dakota market president for First Interstate Bank in Rapid City. Shawn, how are you?
Great, Tom. Thanks for having me on today. I appreciate it.
We consider it a privilege. You're in kind of a unique area, Rapid City. It's certainly a vacation area. As we get into summer, it's obviously typically very busy. Just kind of wondering what you're seeing this year, given the pandemic and some of the other things we're dealing with.
Great question. And what we're seeing, South Dakota, specifically the Black Hills, tourism is a huge driver of our economy. And with the pandemic, we've obviously seen some major setbacks in that sector, along with most others. But just to kind of lay the background for you, in our area for tourism, we have the 1880 Railroad, Crazy Horse, Mount Rushmore, Devil's Tower, Custer State Park, Badlands National Park. The list goes on and on of national attractions that bring people to our area, not to forget the Sturgis Bike Rally and the city of Deadwood, the historic city of Deadwood. So major tourist attractions where we see millions and millions of people come through our area every year. And if you put that in perspective, the citizenry of our area might be 150,000 people. We'll pull over 2 million tourists every year through this area. And when I say maybe 150,000 people, that's maybe all of western South Dakota, so not just Rapid City. So it is a major driver of our economy, and what we've seen is a significant setback. Our motels are operating 40 to 50% of what they were last year, which is obviously not good. Our hotels, motels are running about the same. Our restaurants, if I said that wrong, sorry, are running about the same. They're off significantly. Our campgrounds are a bright spot. A lot of them are actually exceeding last year's numbers. And what we're fortunate with is everything we have is pretty much outdoors here. And so you are able to social distance, and we have not had a crisis with the rate of infection that many other areas have. So we're seeing a lot of tourists starting to show up in our area. The campgrounds, as I said, are doing an amazing business, and hiking, biking, off-road trails for UTVs, boating,
Sure.
The RV market, those are all doing amazingly well in our area. So it's been pretty interesting to see the impact on some areas, very negative, and then other areas are really starting to take off right now.
You mentioned Sturgis, the bike rally. Any word as to whether that will happen this summer as typical?
Yes. So Tuesday night, the Sturgis City Council met, and the Sturgis Bike Rally historically might have anywhere from 300,000 to 800,000 bikers show up in a 10-day period to attend the rally. This was going to be the 80th year, so it's a huge rally they're expecting. The fear was if the city canceled it due to the pandemic, many people were coming anyway. And so the city council was put in a very difficult situation. Don't envy them, but I think they made a wise choice. They elected to host the rally, and by choosing to host it, it allows them to keep control of it. So if there are things that are not being safe, or data might show from CDC or the governor's office or our state health department where we might have some issues, the city of Sturgis has the ability to step in and maybe restrict some events or cancel certain parts of it. But their intent is to host it and try and control it so that it's safe for the citizens and everybody in attendance. It'll be pretty interesting to see how it plays out, but we're seeing amazing reservations coming through for the campgrounds and motels for the bike rally. It starts at the beginning of August, and there's a waiting list in a lot of these places for people wanting to come. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand out there, and they're feeling maybe this is a safe place to go.
Sure. And how about industries outside of tourism? What is your loan demand looking like in some of your other sectors?
It's sitting here in the bank, we've seen an unbelievable demand for housing. We have a acute housing shortage, whether we're talking single family or multifamily. We're seeing a big influx of people, surprisingly, Californians moving in here. Just in the past month, we've seen a significant uptick of people moving here, wanting to relocate to this area. We have a record year going for house refinances and purchases. It's all a supply issue right now, whether we're talking multifamily or single family. But everybody in that business, from construction to real estate agents to the banks that are financing these projects, it's a pretty healthy industry right now.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected First Interstate Bank. Have you changed the way you're delivering services or interacting with customers? And if there have been any changes, do you anticipate those becoming permanent changes or going back to the old ways before too long?
I think first, when it first rolled out, our bank took the approach that first and foremost, we have to protect the health and safety of our employees and our customers. And so we did close our lobbies. South Dakota was not under a shelter in place or a stay-at-home order. So businesses were allowed to operate. But we chose to close our lobbies and operate purely through our drive-through. And I think that was very well received by the community and by our employees. And we've not had any issues with that from a health concern. Things that we've done and I think are here to stay, our treasury products, remote deposit, online banking, mobile banking. We've seen an amazing uptick. I can tell you that we've already done 3 times more new products in South Dakota in that area with our bank than all of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that was through last week. So it's an amazing change we're seeing from our customers saying, I want to be able to do these things remotely or via the internet. And I think that's here to stay. I think people are finding new ways to do business, and some of the later adapters to technology are seeing a reason why they need to adapt now, and they're jumping in with both feet. It's been a great opportunity for our bank as well as the banking industry, and I think it's going to be good it's going to bring more efficiency and more safety, I think, to our customers also, from fraud or embezzlement and a lot of other issues that it will help them with. So that's been some major impacts, as well as remote working. We were running somewhere between 60 and 70% of our employees were working remotely. And we're seeing some areas where the data would suggest that employees are more productive working from home than they were in the office. So we don't know exactly how that plays out, but there's a lesson to be learned from that also, that if people can work from home and be more productive and their quality of work is there, I see something happening for our industry.
That's really something, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Yeah. And I worked remotely a significant amount of the time, and I was worried about it, how it would work, and it worked very well. So
Sure. Okay.
I think that's going to be something big, and I think we could see some long-term implications to our industry and many other industries as a result of that. And it's all tied to technology and remote working.
Right. And now looking a little more broadly to the entire industry, you had an opportunity recently to participate in a virtual town hall meeting with FDIC Chair Jelena McWilliams. Tell us a little bit about that meeting. What were some of the takeaways from that meeting?
Some of the takeaways that I walked away from it with, first and foremost, you talked about the gross domestic product drop, the largest one in history at 32%. She said that estimates are that it's a $7.9 trillion impact to the GDP over a 10-year period. Those are scary numbers. Obviously, we all know the pandemic hit hard and fast, but there's going to be some long-term implications there also. It would sure appear. She talked, and this was an address to the North Dakota and South Dakota Bankers Associations, which generally would hold a convention together, and we didn't this year. They were both canceled, and they're done via Zoom or held remotely. And so she called in to address us, and she talked about how North Dakota and South Dakota didn't have a shelter-in-place order in their states. And then she pointed out their unemployment rates may have been below the national average. through the pandemic. North Dakota started at about 2% unemployment rate, may have peaked around 8.5. South Dakota was at 3.1 and may have peaked around 10.2. So she just made note of that, and I'm not saying that shelter in place did or didn't have an impact on that, but she drew some sort of correlation there. I just found it very interesting. She talked about hospitality and agriculture. Agriculture is our #1 industry, and obviously it was hit. Agriculture had been suffering from low commodity prices for a sustained period of time, and then COVID hit, and we saw some major meatpacking plants in South Dakota and in the Midwest close, and that had an impact on our producers, and it's a ripple effect through the economy. It gets all the way to the row crops, and so she just talked about how there is a lot of stress as a result of this, and the important statements she made were that they are encouraging banks to be preemptive in their action plans in dealing with customers that are negatively impacted by the pandemic. And there's not going to be an assignment of a TDR to loans that we're restructuring. And she said, get creative, be flexible, help these people. Good businesses have been impacted in a bad way, and we want these good businesses to be around. So step up and help your communities and your customers. And she also talked about if banks, there will be no stigma attached to banks that may dip into their capital a little deeper, their capital buffer, to help ride this out. She said that community banks have an absolutely critical role in this recovery. She said she's traveled throughout our region, and she might drive 2 to 3 hours between towns, and she might get from one town to the next. That one might be a 500-person town, and the next one 1,000. They each have one bank in them. And she said those community banks are the cornerstone of those local economies. And if those banks close, those towns are going to fade away. And we've seen that happen. And so she just kept talking about the importance of the strength of the community banking segment of the banking industry. I thought that was very encouraging. And just and they were early to the game. Our biggest fear coming into the pandemic as a bank was, well, if we're going to help these people, a TDR status is going to be very detrimental to all banks' balance sheet. And our regulators came out early, and they're backing it up and saying, no, you help them, get in front of this, take care of them, help them ride it out, and you're not going to be penalized on the backside. So,
sure. Well, that's an important message. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna have to close it up here on one last question here. You're just concluding your year as chairman of the South Dakota Bankers Association. So I want to ask you, just if you in about a minute's time, just summarize what that experience was like. I know also you'll be preparing in the coming year to begin a search for a new president of the association. Maybe you want to comment on that real quickly.
Yes. So my year as the chair of the South Dakota Bankers Association was a great experience. Loved it. Got to meet a lot of great people involved in the ABA. Got to spend more time with our congressional delegation. Met more bankers from across the United States. Great experience. I learned a lot, and I'm very appreciative that I was given that opportunity. Our biggest accomplishment was truly working with our congressional delegation, and specifically Senator Rounds, and helping us find common sense to the PPP and some of the initial policies and procedures that came out. And he, along with many other of our representatives and senators, helped change that to make it better for our communities and our businesses. That was our greatest accomplishment. Kurt Everson is announced his retirement, and he's been with us for 19 years, I believe, next month. He's been an amazing leader of the South Dakota Bankers Association, as well as being on different work groups and chairing different committees at a national level. Very respected. We're going to miss him, but he deserves to retire. And we are starting our national search. The advertising is going out this week, and we are looking forward to transitioning by the end of this year at the latest into a new person to be the president of our organization.
Okay, thank you for that. And we're going to have to wrap it up right there. But Shawn, thank you very much for being with us. I'm Tom Bankston. This has been the Bank Beat Quick Takes video blog.
Thank you, Tom.